Hey there, welcome. This is the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. I want to start off by talking about something that Trump just kind of said. I don't know if this was off the cuff or if this is going to be something he pursued, but I like the sound of it. He said that Election Day is going to be a Christian visibility day, obviously in contrast to the Biden administration putting out a statement for Trans Visibility Day on Easter. You know what? I hope he was serious about that because I kind of like that. That sounds good. My first guest, Jared Filiti, the Lawfare Project Senior Counsel. Welcome back to the James Show. Do you think he's serious about that? Maybe it was off the cuff starting off, but could there possibly be a Christian Day of Visibility?
You know what? It may have started off the cuff, but it seems like a lot of people think it's a good idea, and Donald Trump is not opposed to doing something like that. I think if anyone would do it, he would. And there's a demand now. We're seeing a war on religion. We're seeing a war on Christianity in the U.S. for decades now. So this is not crazy that he would declare a date in November, Election Day, or whatever other date to be a Christian visibility day, if you will, a day to actually celebrate Christianity.
I'm trying to think what would be the argument against it, Gerard?
The argument against it would be the same argument that we hear from every other group, that we don't want to encourage Christianity. We want to empower other minority religions or other religions. We don't want the state to be proclaiming any religious day. The flip side to that is we already have the President of the United States recognizing Ramadan and every other holiday. There's no harm in really recognizing that Christianity exists in the U.S.
Yeah, and I like the sound of that. I was thinking, because I like to get ahead of these things, maybe they could say, well, Christmas is already pretty much a Christian visibility day, and so is Easter. But no, they've really managed to secularize that with the happy holidays and the focus on Rudolph and the bunny instead of Jesus himself. So what would be your counter to that argument?
Yeah, it's hard to counter that argument, but you're absolutely right. They have stripped away Christianity from these holidays. It started with taking the manger away, and now it's gone to Christmas is about Rudolph and the Christmas tree, the holiday tree. We say happy holidays. Easter has nothing to do with Christ. It has to do with the Easter bunny and egg hunts. We are secularizing Christian holidays, but at the same time, we are still being respectful of other religions when they celebrate theirs. So there's a dichotomy here that I think Trump and a lot of people are pointing to.
Well, I also, no one's ever presented this to me, but as a Christian, it kind of does bother me that we have all these other days. We have like a National French Toast Day and a National Wool Sock Day or a National Hot Dog Day, but we don't have a National Christian Day. We don't have a Heterosexual Pride Month. We don't have International Men's Day. So these things have never even been presented to me before. What's up with that, Gerard?
Well, you know what? Maybe we have to start presenting these. There are plenty of calendars that we can offer up, plenty of ideas. And that's kind of the thing. We've gotten to the point where we've recognized so many things that it seems that we're inclusive, but we're really not, because we're missing out things, holidays, dates, issues that are important to millions of Americans.
I totally agree. So if we do a Christian Day of Visibility, what day should it be? I mean, we've already got Christmas and Easter locked up. What else should be on the calendar when Martin Luther nailed his thesis to the door, or what day would it be?
You know, that's a very hard one to pick. I am no expert on that. I think maybe we need to have a conclave of some kind, but I think any day would be good to recognize Christianity and its role in the United States.
Yeah, so the producer, Sean, recommends something in August. You know, the kids are out of school. The weather's going to be nice and hot, so we can do something outdoors, maybe some boating. I figure boating would be big on Christian Day of Visibility. I don't know why. You know, there's a lot of fishing and fishermen involved in that whole New Testament. So maybe August is what we're leaning at so far, Gerard.
I like that idea. It's easy for schools to adopt it because it comes at no cost to them, and we need a holiday in August to look forward to.
Tell me about the Lawfare Project real quick, Gerard Filiti.
We are a nonprofit focusing on civil and human rights, discrimination, and national security based in New York, but working throughout the world.
Thank you very much. This is Gerard Filiti, your guest on the James Show. Thanks for chatting about the possibility of Christian Visibility Day. And that would be the big question is, on what day would it be? What day do Christians have, something special about, but we don't really celebrate it already? So I don't know, maybe like a Good Friday. Maybe we could just roll it into like the whole Easter celebration, or maybe the day before when they had Passover. It was something that I got a good chuckle out of. Maybe you did too, when Trump mentioned the idea of Christian Visibility Day.
And what the hell was Biden thinking when he declared Easter Sunday to be Trans Visibility Day? Such total disrespect to Christians, and November 5th is going to be called something else. You know, it's going to be called Christian Visibility Day, when Christians turn out in numbers that nobody has ever seen before. Let's call it Christian Visibility Day, all right? I've just come from Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I was proud.
Yeah, and so Christian Visibility Day, that sounds like something that could have been off the cuff, although when he talks sort of slow like that and measured, maybe he was reading it. Maybe they thought of it in advance. Maybe when he first, said it or wrote it down, whether it was off the cuff or scripted, it's just kind of intended as a comeback. But I think it resonated with quite a few people. I think the idea of having a Christian Day of Visibility made a lot of people, myself included, ask a question: why don't we have a Christian Day of Visibility, or just some sort of otherwise secular admiration or day of recognition for Christianity? It's one of the bedrock principles and philosophies that shape the founding of our nations. It's the defining characteristic that made us different, our revolution different from the French Revolution, and they had vastly different results. We have the number one selling book every year on planet Earth is the Bible, has been basically ever since the printing press was invented. It's the most consequential, influential book in human history, and we have no recognition of it. We have National Taco Day. We have National Pizza Day. We have National, probably Kitty Litter Day, but we don't have anything like that for Christianity. But it doesn't stop there. Should we have, we have Pride Month for our gay neighbors. And what about a heterosexual Pride Month? When is that? Oh, we don't have one. Oh, so we don't ever go out and celebrate and talk about and have parades for the orientation that kind of keeps the human race going? No special celebration for that, just for the other kind. That's only about 2% or so of the population that is a biological dead end. Not that that makes it bad. It's just seems like we have something to celebrate with the heterosexual Pride Month. Hey, thank you for keeping the human race going. No month for that. Can we get a day for that? Now, we just had International Women's Day. When is International Men's Day? No, nothing for that. Now, I'm not asking for a White History Month because I don't like Black History Month. I don't like dividing up history by race. I think that's weird. But, anything you mention, if you're a white person, if you mention white anything, you're going to be branded as a Nazi. So that's a delicate ground to walk on anyway. And when would you have White History Month? Like the month that mayonnaise was invented anyway? I mean, like what's special? There's not even a white day. Because black people have Juneteenth, and rightfully so. It was a day in Texas that we found out that the Republicans had freed the slaves from the Democrats. Great cause to celebrate, but there's no equivalent in white people world because white people aren't really a homogenous thing. Maybe we could make it when the first episode of Hee Haw aired. That might be what we do. White Day of Visibility. But it also made me think of the women that had the march in D.C. Remember when Trump was first elected and they had planned a big women's march because they thought Hillary was going to win, and so they were going to have a big women's celebration. Hey, look, it's our moment. We finally have a female president. But since Hillary lost, they just turned it into, okay, we're going to put knitted caps made out of our genitalia, or made to look like our genitalia, on our head, and we're going to gripe about Trump. So they're screaming in the streets wearing the pink hats. Should we have a men's march where we all wear weenie hats? We could get your grandma to knit something that looks like something phallic, and you can wear it on your head, and we'll all just fill the streets in our floppy hats. No, I don't want any of this, really. I mean, kind of the Christian Day of Visibility, but I don't want White History Month or White Day of Visibility or a men's march where you have to run around in floppy sock-looking hats. How about you just stop calling me evil for 5 seconds? So it is with that context, I want you to hear this clip from Carville. James Carville, the legendary Democrat strategist who got Clinton into office. And I mean, you know who he is. He has a podcast now. And over this weekend, he was kind of riffing on what the heck's going on. Why are men, especially young men, leaving the left in droves. It used to be if you're younger, you're going to be blue. And as you get older, you kind of evolve to being on Team Red. But Carville's noticing some shocking statistics with young people, especially young men. Now, why is that so?
Very vocal about this. It's horrifying. Our numbers among younger voters, particularly younger blacks, younger Latinos, or whatever, but whatever younger, I don't like that, younger people of color, particularly males. We're not shedding them. They're leaving in the droves, and it don't take time to understand their lives. They think that all politics is just a bunch of people arguing back and forth. Here I am, I'm 26 years old. There's given interest rates, insurance costs, everything that's going on in my life. I don't think I'll ever own a house. Living with my parents, I just think the whole thing is just bull. And I've expressed my contempt or apathy at the system, and I'm telling John Volpe at Harvard, and I'm telling the Quinnipiac people and Marist people, and I don't know, whoever else, the Wall Street Journal poll. I'm disengaged.
See, I love listening to that because, yes, young men are leaving Team Blue, and it's not just they're shedding them. He said they're leaving in droves. Now, if he is in a public platform and asked to explain that, he's not going to give the real answer if it hurts his cause. And I think the real answer is something that he don't want to say out loud. Well, we've been kicking men in the teeth for the last 30 years or so. Of course they're leaving us. All we've done is talk about how evil they are and how violent they are and how toxic they are. And we've celebrated women, and we've celebrated illegal immigrants, and we've celebrated gay people, and we've celebrated trans people, and we've celebrated immigrants, and we've celebrated basically everybody but you. Well, how about you stop calling us toxic for 5 seconds, and maybe you wouldn't have this problem. But I'd like to ask you, why do you think young men are leaving the left in droves? This is not normal. This is above and beyond what we're used to. And this could be an amazing shift, because if there's a big move to the right with young men, and then with older women and older men, it's already Team Red. There's only going to be one solidly blue demographic left, and that's younger women. And they're going to have to hold on to that for dear life. I mean, that's based, in my estimation, primarily on their support for abortion. Whether that's right or that's wrong, it's kind of hard to argue with. But when Carville says we're not shedding them, they're leaving in droves, I did not buy his explanation for that, because I don't think he wants to say the explanation out loud, because that'll make it even worse. What do you think, Clark and Plano? Why are young men leaving the left?
They're just believing their lying eyes when they turn 18 and get a job. I just want to say I'm a millennial, so I'm a little bit older than most of the people graduating now. But, of course, I went through public schools and went through the whole, toxic masculinity thing and all that stuff, until I was privileged and all that stuff. And by the time I turned 18, I had to get a job. And the first one was working for a large retailer pushing carts in the 107-degree Texas heat, not making enough money to move out of my mom's house. And started realizing I really wasn't impressing anybody. It took me a while to claw out of poverty, but I did. And I don't even have it near as bad as the kids do these days.
Okay, but Clark, hang on now. Why wasn't that the case 20 years ago? Well, 20 years ago, people turned 18, young men turned 18, and they had to go out and they had to get a job. But they had a tendency to vote blue through their 20s and make the transition around their 30s.
Oh, I just think it's because the inflation is much more worse than it is now. The economic situation is much worse than it is now. Back when I was a kid, housing was dirt cheap. And now, I mean, if I was to buy the same house I live in now, it'd be double it. I can't even imagine affording it. And it's like almost the whole country's turned into what California was when I was a kid, housing-wise.
Yeah, well, see, there's a few angles you can take at this, though, and you're taking the economic angle, which for some people, absolutely, that has to be one of the defining characteristics. But there's got to be some other people out there who are just tired of being told that they're evil or just being tired of being told that there's no program for you, there's no space for you, your opinion means less. And that's not that's not economic at all. But I mean, you start combining these things, and I wonder how young men were ever blue in the first place.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I mean, it really is taxing on you. And then when you go out in the real world and you realize like how little people care and how things really are, it's totally different from everything you've been told in school on up and what the media is telling you.
Right. Well,
people are going to be saying, I believe my lying eyes, not what I'm told.
Right. So I've heard that from quite a few of my black colleagues in talk radio. You know, they all started out as lefties, and they have a transition story. It's like the people who converted to Christianity in adulthood, and their testimonials are all great. They're like, I was taught that white people just wake up and they're like, say, how am I going to impress minorities today? And then they get to it. And when I got old enough to actually work with them and not just he went to an almost all black school in New Orleans. I'm thinking of Chris. He's like, it turns out y'all don't care at all. I'm like, yes, we don't care. We don't spend one calorie of energy worrying about how we can oppress people based on their skin color any day of our lives. I mean, people used to do that. They were called Democrats. It's definitely not us. But I never considered myself a Democrat or Republican my entire life. But it's not an even rejection. There is no way in hell I would ever want to be associated with the Democrat Party based on their history. You know, when I came out of high school, I had no political affiliation or even thought of what I could be. I didn't know what Team Red and Team Blue were. I didn't know what the two parties stood for. Didn't really care. But I started to read into it, and let me learn about the parties. Which one should I vote for? I have to actually vote now. I'm 18. I need to read up on this. And so I read first off that the Democrats were the party of slavery and segregation and Jim Crow, but also the Trail of Tears. They were the party of putting Japanese in World War II internment camps. They were the party that was against women's suffrage. Susan B. Anthony was a Republican. Basically, they've been on the wrong side of every human rights issue in American history. And then on top of that, human rights, nothing. Look at them on economics. They're the party of socialism. They're the party that was apologetic and sympathetic to the communists and the Soviet Union all this time. They love socialism. They still have the Bernie Sanders and AOCs as their mouthpiece in the face of their party. But it's also the ideology that killed over 100 million of its own citizens in the last century alone. So that's what I found like in my first study of politics when I was literally 18. It's like, well, I know I'm not part of that party. And then in the modern time, they're also they're pro gun control, they're pro speech control. And so that was me at 18 saying, well, I read on the Republicans. I'm not one of them. I'm definitely not one of the Democrats. But I've always been partial to the views of both. I think both Team Red and Team Blue, they have a good case to make to a 20-year-old who doesn't know any better. But we've also seen Democrats mutate into something that they weren't when I got out of college, 25-something years ago. God, how old am I, 100? Yeah, close to it. So like things I used to not like about the GOP, they were for weed prohibition and they were against gay marriage. They've sort of relaxed on those issues where I used to disagree with them. And then the things I used to agree with the Democrats on, they have now mutated to where I liked legal weed and gay marriage. That was part of my social departure or overlap with the Democrats, but they've mutated that into what people do in their bedroom is none of your business to, hey, little kid, let's have a private sex conversation with this pornographic material without your parents' approval. Wow. Okay. What else do you want to do? We want to keep porn in elementary schools and sterilize children. All right. I think we have a big answer on why some guys are leaving the left. John in Durant, you're on the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now 93.3 FM. What do you think?
I want to talk about that. I don't think this Christian Alert Day doesn't need to be just one day. It needs to start the first day of voting, when you can vote. And there needs to be 100 million people vote in the first week of early voting. So they can't try to claim that they're going to take over the last day of election with all those supposed votes showing up like they did in 2020.
Yeah, so you're responding to what sort of sparked this whole conversation at all, and that was Donald Trump calling for a Christian Day of Visibility because he was making fun of the Trans Day of Visibility. And you think it should be the first day of early voting?
Because I think that's what he's referring to it about. He's referring to it about November 5th as Election Day. So I hope somebody with the Trump Association hears this and says, Donald Trump, you need to change that to the first day of early voting for your Christian Recognition Day, and it runs through all of the voting.
Well, I would think if you're pro-Trump, pro-Christian, you would be anti-early voting. You're pro-early voting, or are you just playing the system that we have?
That's just until we get the votes in there to correct all the voting. That's the way we need to do it.
I hear you.
We need to. I mean, just like on that runoff election in Georgia for the 2 Senate seats, everybody was preaching every show you listen to, get out and vote early, get out and vote early, get out and vote early. But when the day of election came, everybody said, well, nobody showed up. Well, everybody was supposed to vote early. But then there also needs to be a way to confirm that you vote. So I think at every precinct, polling precinct, there needs to be somebody standing out there with a sign with a phone number to call and say, this is the number you call, your name, your date that you voted, and time. So it's all recorded, so there's an independent count to the vote, not just rely on people who are supposed to be doing it accurately.
Well, I like the way it's done in some overseas jurisdictions where the reason why they go out with ink on their finger is because 2 reasons. Sometimes some countries do it so you can't vote twice. You get your thumb stained, so you can't wash it off. So if you show up and you already have a stained thumb, I don't care what your ID says, you're not voting. And then I've also seen that some jurisdictions you ended up with a ink on your thumb because they take a thumbprint with your vote. That way you can tell if there's a duplicate ballot or if a guy voted more than once. You would be able to detect it from a fingerprint. There's more than we can do than what we're doing from locking these down now, but it's kind of a chicken or the egg conversation. It's like, well, how do we get the people in power to change these laws while these laws are still in place? Because we can't win if these laws are going to be exploited like they are. So you're bringing up some great points, John. Thank you very much for calling. Jeffrey in Arlington, you're on the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. What do you think, Jeffrey?
Regarding the shift in the generation, this is nothing new. Sir Winston Churchill said, when you're young, if you're not liberal, you have no heart. When you're older and you're not conservative, you have no brain.
Well, but this is breaking that tradition. We're now seeing young men not even go through the liberal phase, just jump that whole nonsense and go ahead and being conservative or right wing.
What are you calling young?
Under 30.
No, they're beginning. They're out there. They're trying to get a job. They're not that young. You're not talking about high school.
No. Well, high school people can't vote, so we don't care what they think anyway. But the previous generations, the previous 4 generations, all followed this pattern where they were overwhelmingly blue, men and women, until they got into their 30s and 40s, depending on what election you look at. And we are seeing that pattern finally be broken after about 80 years of establishment.
Well, not every generation matures at the same rate.
I know it just seems weird that this generation would be maturing faster than previous, but whatever the explanation is, I like it. I like how it's turning out so far.
Well, let's hear it for Sir Winston Churchill.
Yes, let's hear it for Winston Churchill. Well done, sir. And thank you very much for calling. If you got a comment on this, 800-288-WBAP. Hey, you can head over to the WBAP.com contest page. Register now for your chance to win tickets. Guess who's playing this weekend at Globe Life Field on Sunday? The Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros. It's a Sunday game, Sunday evening game. It's not going to interrupt church. You can still go, and then you can go out to eat with your family afterwards. You can come home, take a nap, and then get the family together. Go see Texas Rangers versus the Houston Astros. Gee, that was the conference championship last year. I wonder if there's any bad blood or emotion still between these teams. For more information, you can go to TexasRangers.com. You can get tickets there as well, TexasRangers.com. Dane in Fort Worth, you're on the James Show. What do you think about this?
Hey, James. How you doing today?
I am well, sir. Thank you for asking.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, it was something that you were talking about a minute ago. You were saying, the Democrats have always been associated with all these atrocities of the slavery and the women's suffrage and the Jim Crow laws. And,
Trail of Tears,
the Trail of
internment
Tears.
camps.
Right. Okay. So I used to argue with this guy on social media. He was on the left, I'm on the right. And I used to list all these things. And he said at some point in time, and he never could give it an exact time frame, but he said the Democrats and Republicans switched sides.
I love that argument.
Scoured the internet, and I can't find where we switched sides. I was wanting to see what your take is on that.
Well, I love that argument because if they can make that stick, then all the atrocities that the Democrat Party did can now be what? The blame can be assigned to you. You're guilty of all. It's the neatest trick in the world. But yeah, the question would be, what did they switch on, and when did it happen? Are the two things we need to slice out here.
Well,
and so, look, you can't say that the Democrats have changed one whit the entire history of the country when it comes to economics.
No,
They've always wanted bigger government, more government programs, and that sort of morphed into what we now call socialism, communism, fascism, whatever, just the lefty economic isms in there. So, okay, so you can't say they switched sides on economic issues. So what about human rights issues, social issues? Okay, the question comes, did the Republicans ever run around in hoods and lynch people? I mean, did they ever try and make
That's an argument I used to make with him.
Right.
And he said, oh, no, we switched sides. That was all Republicans just back then. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. I don't care if we switched sides or not. It's still associated with the Democrat Party.
Yeah, well, they never switched. There was never a switch. Republicans never took up the mantle, and
No.
And look, the fun part is trying to find the date on it, because you can't say
he could never list one. He never could.
No. Because
when did that happen?
Right. Because if you try and say it was in the 50s, okay, well, Democrats were filibustering the Civil Rights Act of 1964, so it couldn't have been before that. So did it happen since then? And so how different could the Democrats have possibly changed their attitudes compared to the 60s, when one of the guys filibustering the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was someone, Al Gore Sr. He has a son, Al Gore Jr., who is still a spokesman and highly regarded figure in the Democrat Party. He never switched. So we can't say that they've switched since the 60s. It's the conundrum. You're probably better off trying to figure out where P. Diddy is right now. Let's go to Jay in Fort Worth. You're on the James Show. What do you think about all this, Jay?
Yeah, I wanted to call about the guy who was saying to vote early, and I think that's actually the worst thing to do, because if we all vote early, that gives the Democrats more time to know what number to meet to cheat. So if we're,
look. Early voting is, I think we all agree that it's bad and it needs to be getting rid of. But while it exists, should you early vote or not? I can understand the arguments both ways, but we just have to get rid of that. We have to do all paper ballots, all voting on one day. No absentee, no early, none of this other stuff. If France just did it and they had the results before the sun came up the next day, we can do it too. Thank you very much, Jay. Let me take some more calls here. I got a few people lined up. I appreciate you calling, Jay. Thank you. Chase in Denton, you're on the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. What do you think?
Hey, what's up, James? I am one of those under 30 Republican conservative types. I think it stems from listening to WBAP with my dad when I was growing up. Oh man, we had some good times listening to Rush and Mark Levin. But my parents were really they wanted me to know what was going on. They wanted me to have an opinion about what was going on, and have critical thinking. They really instilled critical thinking at a young age. And
why isn't it working on women then?
I think women are different than men and tend to think not with logic but with feeling.
Okay, we'll be careful there. I hear you though. I hear you. Just I like to escape criticism and not say anything inflammatory so people don't miss the larger arguments that we're making. But I'm not saying you're wrong, Chase. Thank you for calling. Brian in Mesquite, you're next up on 820 AM, now 93.3 FM WBAP. What do you think, Brian?
Hello. Well, I think that group of young males is probably one of the smallest groups that actually get out and vote. But if I had to guess at a reason why they're going from blue over to red is because the government, the socialism, they want us to depend upon the government for everything. And they want to feed us, they want to give us Medicaid or housing, all this free stuff. So we're dependent on the government, so we don't actually work hard to pay for these things. And as a young male, especially if you're single, you don't have children, you're not married or anything like that, you don't qualify for any of those things. So you have to get out and get a job and work to support yourself unless you're living at home.
They haven't been able to do that for a long time. They never really been able to do that in a lot of red states. But since we had welfare reform in the 90s, there's been a whole generation. Did you think it just took a generation for it to catch on?
Well, it was easier to get a job.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Well, hey, I think you're making some strong points there.
Yeah.
All right, let me squeeze in one more. Thank you, Brian from Mesquite. Vince in Dallas, you're on the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. What do you think, sir?
Well, I'm gonna venture off a little bit from why the young guys are switching now, and I'm gonna go back to the party switching. Nobody can give an actual date and time to where the situation switched. But if you look at the Republican Party right now, they have more in common with what the Democratic Party was way back in the day. Like the Republican Party back when Lincoln was over it and they were trying to free the slaves, they were more progressive, trying to move the country forward. The South wanted to keep things the same, and that's the way it is now, but it's switched. Right now, the Republican, or what I call the Trump Party, they want their main thing that they talk about is make America great again. They want to keep it the way it was back in the day. The Democratic Party wants to move forward. You see everybody that's carrying Confederate flags like the Ku Klux Klan does at Republican meetings or Republican gatherings or whatever. You don't see that at Democratic. You don't see a Confederate flag at a Democratic convention. You see it all at Republican conventions.
No, of course they wouldn't fly that at Democrat conventions. They don't want to remind everyone that the Confederate flag is a Democrat flag. And
it was then. It was then, but right now it has more in line with the Republican Party than it does the Democratic Party.
On what policy? On what policy? You said the ethereal concept of we want to move forward and Republicans want to keep it the same. What policy do they overlap? That's not a policy. That's in fact, that's so subjective. It really means nothing. On what policy do the Republicans agree with the Klan?
You can go with the Klan?
Yes.
The whole, I don't want to say the whole George Floyd thing, but it's always law and order when it comes to the police, the local police. But when it comes to the national police, like the FBI, they're all crooked. And I'm not saying I'm not saying the Republican Party aligns with the Ku Klux Klan. I'm just saying they have more in common with the Ku Klux. You always see. I mean, look at the situation that happened in Charlottesville. All those people that were saying Jews would not replace us was on the right. It wasn't people on the left saying Jews would not replace us.
All right, so the guy that was leading the neo-Nazis and that contingency, he's a guy named Richard Spencer. Do you know who he endorsed for president in the last election?
I know who house he went over.
Do you know what party he is registered to?
I know who house he went to visit, and I bet you, I can almost guarantee you, he's going to endorse Trump. And you don't
listen. I'm out of time, but you don't have to guess. He's a registered Democrat. He endorsed Joe Biden. You don't have a policy that you can name where the Republicans overlap with the KKK. The Confederate flag thing, if that's the best connection you have, I think you lost the argument. This is the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.